Notes from my November 2021 reading of More Myself, A Journey by Alicia Keys with Michelle Burford. So I am returning to this. I'm Tanis Coralee Leonhardi, she, her, hers of Seattle, and I'm filming this Wednesday, 8 May 2024. And since I've been reading more biographies and autobiographies, there were a few that I was like, I should go back to and do a notes video on some of these or reread them. And so this one I'm putting into the category of doing a notes video. So if I reread it, then it might be notes from the more recent reading. And I want to preserve that this was towards the beginning of this kind of uptick in my reading biographies and autobiographies. I have returned to a book before. So in 2023, I returned and did notes for a book I read in 2022, Running Man. I have by Charlie Engle, memoir by Charlie Engle. So this came before this in my reading. However, this already has a notes video and this does not. That worked out well. So there we go. Last time I did check it out from the King County Library System when I read it back in November 2021, which is the price tag was $29.99 US dollars and $35.99 in Canada. So this is actually one of those books that I'm like, you know, if reading a bunch of autobiography and biography and not really sure what one's tastes are yet, this is like a perfect example of a book to get at the library, especially if pinched for money. Speaking from experience. Okay, so that's the introduction. And that was King County Library System, Washington State, United States of America, Planet, the original. So book notes includes construction and design. I thought it fit the person. I liked the multicolored white, black, golden bronze. It's not quite a brass. Metallic. How about a metallic color? I liked the amount of text per page. This was a book that I was like, I opened it and I was like, I'm just gonna see if I can do it. And I read it and it was like 3 days, maybe. It took me 2 to 4 days to read this book. And I just remember being like, that's cool. Yeah. I thought the chapters fit the content of the chapters. So like sometimes people go with like a theme for a chapter, and sometimes it's matches or is easy to like follow, and it like the content of the chapter matches the chapter title. This is a book where it did. It has her name, Alicia Keys, and then the name of the book or myself on the top of the pages. Page numbers are at the top. There was regular font, italics for various reasons, and then like italicized font, and then some of the font actually did vary in size, so it's not the same font size throughout the entire book. So like here's the smaller font, and it goes smaller to bigger. So if like that might be jarring to some people, and it's specifically towards the beginning of the chapter. So like here's the new chapter, so here's something in smaller font, so you know that this text is different than the following text. And there were no visuals, which is actually in something reading. So this is an example of an autobiography. I don't know how much the Michelle Burford contributed. I have read another, Michelle Burford assisted the Miss Simone Biles, Courage to Soar, after this. Read that one this year, 2024. But I don't know how much they assisted. They're similar in style in the sense of there's a lot of name mentioning without necessarily describing who the person being mentioned is, which as someone who's not a singer or in the music industry, and someone who was not a gymnast in the case of the Simone Biles ones, there's a little bit of, well, sometimes I think these books might be very much written for a certain industry, but the audience isn't necessarily the certain industry. It's just a thing. Yeah. Is there anything else for confection and design? That's kind of a content one. So, okay, I guess. So, reading notes. There were a bunch of name mentions without necessarily describing who the people were. And I was like, for how much name mentioning there was, it was kind of like, per personal taste, it was a, I think I've rated this 4 out of 5 stars on the library system. And part of it was name mentioning. Was just, I don't know who these people are. And even if I did, it would be nice to have, like, you know, a little bit of a description as to who they are and what they meant to the person. Right? Instead of, like, this person is so prolific, or, like, that's not, that can be said about anybody. Like, what's the role for the person? I enjoyed it. I read it in 3 to 4 days, so it was like, I think this one was coming up, this was about the same time as when I read Soul Surfer by Bethany Hamilton, which is a surfing autobiography, and she was a shark attack victim, and that one was shorter, and that one had a variety of visuals, so I thought this was a good one to read at about the same time for the contrast of not having visuals. This is actually something I've thought about with, like, if I write an autobiography. I've been taking photos since the 1990s, like starting in the 1990s, and I was born in the 1990s. And so I thought it was cool that she didn't have visuals, and to have somebody who, like, there's a lot of music videos, there's a lot of pictures of her, there's a lot of stuff like that, and to not have any, I thought it's, I very much value this book for that reason. And the being able to think through it with my own mind, right? There's visualization freedom is provided when pictures are not provided. And I thought this book did an excellent job of that. I thought it was excellently well written. If there were mistakes, there were not many, like in terms of, like, punctuation and stuff, and it did not detract from the reading. And it was cool. I enjoyed, so I have listened to Alicia Keys' music for a while. I am that old. And so it was fun to read which songs were included and what stories mattered for her for a book of this nature. So I enjoyed it. Enjoyment value was high, as was entertainment value. And there were just little things like that. The name mentioning thing. It wasn't, I think, yeah. That was, I think, legitimately the biggest detractor. And then there was a little bit of, like, her and her husband, Kasim Dean, did a bunch of, like, movie reenactment stuff. And I was like, to each their own. That's not necessarily my taste. Though, like, you know, there are times in life where we invoke stuff, so I thought it was nice of her to include. Like, how do you include, if something is not, right, she's a singer-songwriter, and she plays a musical instrument, not piano, so musical artist. How does somebody, if something is not one's own in an origin, how does one bring it up? So I thought she did a good job of navigating that in this book. So, like, for example, like, let's say for my wedding, let's say it's an unplanned, planned proposal where I'm filming, like, a notes video or something, and Josh Kerr's there, and he like pulls out a ring and proposes, and I didn't know it was gonna happen. So it was unplanned. It was like spontaneous choice, but it's planned because he has a ring, kind of thing, like, in that sense, but he's, like, waiting for the right moment. So unplanned, planned. Do we then take and be like, we liked what Matthew McConaughey and his wife Camilla did, where they got engaged. Okay, I like her music for her love stuff, so this is, for me, meaningful to include this here. Right, how do I invoke if I really like a song of hers in my life, and would it make my autobiography? So I'm talking through an example that's more, I can start to, like, try and put together. It would be, so then there's the unplanned, planned proposal that maybe even is caught in a YouTube video kind of thing. I post on YouTube. And then do we take the approach of, once we have the proposal, we're like, we really like what Matthew McConaughey and his wife Camilla did in his autobiography, Green Light. He said that they got engaged and they didn't set a wedding date. And so maybe the wedding turns out to be kind of the planned wedding, like kind of like the proposal. Maybe it doesn't. But we're like, we like what they did. We like that. We want that for us. My wedding with, my who being Josh Kerr. There's my wedding with it being Dominique Szoboszlai. There's that kind of thing, but there's thinking through with Josh Kerr. And name mentioning Dominique Szoboszlai. Okay, so Josh Kerr, my boyfriend Josh Kerr, who lives in the Seattle area, and my Hungarian hunk boyfriend Dominique Szoboszlai. And Josh Kerr is Scottish, so maybe we have a wedding on the rocks in Scotland or something, but unplanned plan, so how would that work? So don't set a date, you know, kind of thing. Yeah, but then, so that's one that has come to mind before this last video, and then with this one, right? Like if I really like the song No One by Alicia Keys, I really still do, how would I put that in my book? And I don't know how to do that for that, so I'm doing something from a recent autobiography, or autobiography I read recently. Right. So, yeah. And this book came out actually the same year as Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, 2020. Yes. And this is a March 2020 first edition. So there we go. In conclusion, those are my notes. I hope this isn't too long for my less than 15 minutes, but I enjoyed it.